Triton. Welcome to the Star Cave. Well, we've been working on the Rosette Nebula here of late, and now we're ready to do the editing, and I use Affinity Photo for my editing, but same things can be done with Photoshop or GIMP or whatever your editor of choice are. I will show you in Affinity Photo, and you can extrapolate from there. So the goal here, of course, is we're shooting in really bad skies in Bortle 8. So I'm in this area just a little bit northeast of this little red glump right here, and because of that I have no hope for good skies. And here were the skies back in 2012, and yeah, there were places you could drive to not too unreasonably to get to dark skies, but here in 2019 it's just gotten ridiculous, and it's getting worse and worse every year. So as an engineer, what do? I figure out a way around all of that, and what I found is the Hyperstar from Starizona works really well. It's an f2 system. So if you've done photography, you've heard about f-stops. F2 is really fast f-stop. A normal telescope is usually around about f8, for instance. So f2, the next stop would be 2.8, it's square root of 2 each time. And then f4, f5.6, f8. So we're looking at 4 stops of difference, and it's not 4 times, it's 2, 4, 8, 16 times faster. The photos of the Rosette Nebula that I captured were done in 2 minutes. Each one of them was 2 minutes. So they are equivalent to a 30-minute exposure on a normal f8 telescope. So quite a bit faster, and I've gathered a lot of really good data here. So let's go ahead and jump in. But before, we'll have a really quick review of how we got to this point. So here is our goal. We got to there because we're using, of course, the Hyperstar system, but we're using the L-Enhance filter with the Hyperstar system. What the L-Enhance filter does, if I attempted to use a 30-minute exposure, well, first of all, I'm going to have tracking, guiding problems and noise and everything else. But the biggest thing is I'm going to have all this noise pollution that we saw. So with the L-Enhance filter, and there are other filters very similar to this made by other manufacturers, is it only passes important nebulosity. The universe contains gigantic, we're talking many light years across gas clouds, and in some cases these gas clouds are illuminated by extremely bright hot stars that are emitting X-rays, and they cause this gas to glow like a neon light. And like a neon light, they make very specific frequencies of light. So we have what we call hydrogen alpha. That's the primary frequency that hydrogen emits when it glows. And then down here we have hydrogen beta, which is much dimmer, but still is part of the hydrogen spectrum. And then right next to it is the oxygen. So if it's kind of a primordial cloud of ionized gas, it's going to be mostly hydrogen. If it has a little bit a gas cloud that comes from other stars that have emitted some of their oxygen and other elements, what we call metals, then those will show up in this oxygen line. So by using this, we get one shot, and using a one-shot color camera, we're able to gather all of the light that we need to shoot really beautiful objects, such as the Rosette Nebula that we're doing here today. And we're able to do it in one shot because the Hyperstar is extremely fast, 2-minute exposures, I captured 40 of these exposures. We threw away one. And so we have just a little over an hour and 15 minutes total exposure time. Now, if you're not familiar with how telescopes and astrophotography works, up to this point, what is usually been done, and what I've done many times myself, is to shoot a set of 40 or 20 or 40 images of each of these lines. So we'll shoot 40 images just of hydrogen alpha, and then we'll shoot 40 images just of oxygen. Sometimes we'll shoot sulfur, and then we'll shoot luminance, which is no filtration at all, just cutting off the infrared and ultraviolet. And then we'll shoot a whole series of red, a whole series of green, a whole series of blue. That's called LRGB. We have hours and hours and hours of exposures, and then you have to go and edit all of these together. What we're doing here in this method that we've come up with, and it's just, stumbled across it because of these other manufacturers have enabled this to even come about, is we're able to, with the Hyperstar, make very fast exposures. With the L-enhanced filter, we're able to primarily capture only the nebulosity of these objects, and then with our editing, we're able to then make some beautiful images very quickly. Now, one thing that we start with is back in APT, when we gathered these images to begin with, this is what we saw on the screen. Okay, not that beautiful, not so great, but a lot of potential. And the other thing is, when we look at this, we see in our histogram, this is very important. If you're not familiar with histogram, I'm going to spend a lot of time explaining that. I'm going to have videos just on histograms. And just want to show you something really quick. One is that the histogram is based on how many pixels of each of these colors, or how many pixels at each brightness exist. So we see we have 3 lumps here, and those 3 lumps, as it turns out, correlate to red, green, and blue. Well, actually red, blue, green, reading from left to right. Green, because the most sensitive color for the sensor is green. Blue, because, well, even though it's night, the sky still is blue, so we have a lot of blue in there. And then the red, the only red that we get comes from the nebulosity. So looking at these lumps in the histogram now, we only have very little to work with as far as red goes, and then the blue, and then the green. So if I were to just examine this image here without doing anything to enhance the red, I would see almost no red at all. So I want to show you how I did that. I go to Tools and the APT Settings and the CCD tab, and of course I'm shooting one-shot color. What I've done over here though, in the D-Bayer, that's what I'm looking at, is called the D-Bayer image. I have that red pumped up 4 times. And that's the only reason I can see really any red at all. I also bump up the blue a little bit so it balances out the green better. But if you're doing, and I also, because I'm shooting Hyperstar, I have more data, and so I have a higher stretch factor, but no extra charge for that. But you want to take and increase your scaling factor for the red. And otherwise, when you look at it, the data is there, but you just can't see it, and you kind of wonder, am I really in focus? Am I really getting anything? So you want to increase that. So there's my 3 lumps, red, blue, and green lump. And I can also, by the way, I can click on the white. Okay, twirl this down. here, click on the white, and then now I can double click anywhere up here, and the white level will go wherever I double click. So that way I can darken it down a little bit and see a little bit more of the nebulosity. This just helps me when I'm shooting to get a better idea of what I'm actually capturing. Okay, so that's the capture process. Now another thing I want to emphasize, after we capture, then we stack. So I brought it into the stacking program. I moved the middle level and the black level around so I could actually see my nebulosity. It comes up, it looks like this, you don't see any nebulosity. So we take the middle slider and slide it toward the left, and then maybe a little bit more, and then slide the far left slider to the right a little bit to kind of darken that out. Now we can see that, okay, yeah, we have some nebulosity in there. And this is what the image looks like in APT. If you don't do that ×4 stretching, you don't see any of that nebulosity. And we're looking at the stars. Stars are nice and round, but the stars are also green. And that's just the nature of how the L-enhance filter works, is it leaves the stars green because, you know, those three humps, red, blue, and green. Green has the most response in it. The problem is, we look at the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. This is from universetoday.com. And guess what? There are no green stars. Okay? Get that through your head. There are no green stars. So Uranus has kind of a blue-green color, that planet. Some of the planetary nebula, like the Cat's Eye Nebula, for instance, it has a lot of oxygen in it. It can appear a little bit green, but the stars themselves are only blue, white, or red, or yellow. Blue, white, yellow, or red. That's it. That's all. Only stars are only those colors. So if you have green stars, you're doing something wrong. And it's okay that we have green stars in our stacking here, but by the time we get to our final edit, we have to make sure that all of that green, any extraneous green, is totally erased. Otherwise, it doesn't look natural at all. So after we stack and we've stretched and got everything the way we want, then we're ready to take it into Affinity Photo. And here's just a quick edit that I did earlier today, just kind of practice. And now let's go ahead and open that file that we saved, the one that we just stacked. Oop, I didn't want to close that. I want to open. There we go. So we're going to open that Rosette with the darks bias and the L-enhance flats. So what you see here is just D and B. I didn't do any flats at all. So we'll see if the flats help. We'll find out. So here we are. This is open. Now I have a plugin that I use called the Astro Flat Pro plugin. You can download it and try it out for 15 days. Otherwise, it's 35 bucks. And what I found is that in some cases, it is absolutely indispensable. In other cases, it helps a little bit. So, you know, it's not a necessity every time. What I'm going to do is first of all, I'll duplicate the layer that I have. So if I need to, I can come back to my original. I'm just going to work with the duplicate for right now. So I'll try that Astro Flats Pro and see what happens. So I go to Filters, Plugins, Pro Digital Software, Astro Flat Pro. Choose that, Don't do anything else because it only works with the base image. Let me turn this a little bit here. There we go. So the default settings are all 20s, and we see it here at 20. Wow, this does look, it looks better already. So we'll see how it works out in the end. The way that this Astro Flats Pro, you want to work with it is you want to go from top to bottom. So we'll start with the smoothness, we'll play around with that. The edge cleanup, we'll play with that. The dark noise reduction, we'll play with that. So in that order, it helps. So smoothness, I look at that. And also it's telling me here, you know, this is what it looks like with no smoothness. This is a thumbnail of what it looks like with total smoothness. So we can push it down here and you'll notice that it gets very, I don't know what you call that, like rusty or something. And then we can smooth it, and then we can totally smooth it to where it's really, we've lost some of our detail. So, you know, I don't think 20 is really good. I'm going to crank it up to about 50. And then the edge cleanup, they do the same thing. Push it both ways, see which way you like the best. So I think I like it, honestly, about 50 again. And it's different every time. So don't go, oh, 50, you know. No, it'll be different every time. And then noise reduction, so no noise reduction, total noise reduction. I don't see a whole bunch of difference, but you're not going to see noise reduction on that level. So I'm going to zoom in here a couple of clicks and take a look at the noise reduction. See, there's with no noise reduction, and there it is all the way cranked up. Yeah, and there really isn't that much of a difference, so we'll just leave it. Let's see, I'll find some happy place here. Let's scroll up, make sure we have to the edge. Take a look what's going on there. Okay, yeah, so it is better up there. All right, so I'm going to put this at about 70. And again, I have a backup copy if I need it. So click OK, and then it just takes about 5 or 10 seconds on this computer. And there we go. Alrighty, so I'm going to turn this one off so it's not confusing anybody. So we're only looking at this background copy. We've done the Astro Flats Pro, and now I'm going to adjust the color balance. I'm going to do that using curves. So I'll bring up the curves, and it shows me a histogram to look at. That's wonderful, but I'm only going to try to balance the colors a little bit right here. So rather than, if I make a change here now, I'm changing all the colors, all the lights, everything all at once. So let me reset that. What I want to do is change just the color. So I'm going to leave red alone. That's my what I'm trying to achieve here. I noticed that within the red I have this kind of a bluish green color. It's called cyan. And actually cyan is the opposite of red. So if I pull cyan out, and the way I pull cyan out is pull out green and blue, everything but red. And by doing that, it will help us to see the red better. And experience tells me I want to start with green. So I'm going to go and pull up just the green. And Affinity Photo has this thing called Picker. I can click on that. I love this picker. And now I can just pick kind of a medium tone here. And if I click on it and then pull down, it's going to decrease that. So the opposite of green is magenta. So I can see I'm getting very magenta now. If I pull all the way down, that's just, you might think of it as purple, it's actually magenta. So we want to kind of balance that purple out a little bit there, the magenta. And now I see I'm left with the same problem with blue. So let me go here and select blue. I still have the picker chosen. I do, yeah. And I'll go somewhere kind of about the same level and pull down the blue in this case. So I pull that down. And yeah, right about there. So the opposite of blue is yellow. So what I'm trying to do here is balance between blue and yellow and get that happy. And then red is what I know I want to accentuate. So I'm just going to click on red and then pick out a middle here and just push that up. Just kind of push the reds up a little bit. Give me a little bit more red there, not too much. And then I'm going to go somewhere dark because I have a lot of red in the background sky here. And I know that by looking at other photos of the Rosette Nebula that there is, you know, it's part of a larger hydrogen alpha cloud. But at this point, I'm really focused on the nebula itself. And so I'm going to try to downplay a little bit of that background hydrogen. This is probably correct like this, but because for artistic reasons, I'm going to pull the, click on that and just kind of pull down the background red a little bit. Now when I did that, this curve got really curvy, and it got a little too curvy up near the top here for me. What's happened, what this means is if I go way too much, let me just grab a hold of this guy and go way up. Okay, see now, when this gets flat up against here, I have completely lost any detail in that area. And look, I have some detail, and who knows, I probably am throwing away red detail here. Well, I'm trying to keep my detail. So I want to be sure that I never flatten out any of my curves, either top or bottom. And I don't really even want to have too much of a curve to be too curvy. I mean, that's really too much. So there are other ways to increase the red in my image. So I'm going to pull that down to where it's just a little bit higher like that, and then see how it works out. The good news is this is what's called a live filter, or it's not a live filter, but I can come back and re-edit it if I need to. So this was only to balance the color. I'm not trying to bring out nebulosity or do any manipulation like that yet. All I'm trying to do here is get a nice balance in the color. So you might think, well, gee, why don't I use the color mix or channel mixer or the white balance or whatever? And yeah, sometimes those work out better. Most of the time, by manipulating each of the curves individually, the gamma of the curves, and maybe even making a little S curve on them to pull down the shadows and push up the highlights a little bit to give it a little more contrast, that really works out better, I think. So at this point, I can go ahead and add another curves layer and then do just that as far as increasing the highlights and decreasing the shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and push this up a little bit. Again, being sure I'm not pushing it too far. I'm going to go to the background sky, make sure I'm not on a star, and pull that down. Okay, so that gave me a lot more contrast. So that's A. Now B, let's try just contrast. See how that works out. So I'm going to close that, I'm going to turn it off, and then add a contrast layer and bump the contrast. See what happens here. So try it right about there. Okay, so there's my contrast, and I think I'll give it a little bit more brightness, because contrast sometimes will just kind of crush everything down. So a little more brightness, a little more contrast. Okay, so there's B. So that's B, and then A. Which do I like better? Well, I think I like the curves better. Okay, so there's contrast and there's curves. Yeah, I think I like the curves better. Okay, so a lot of this is just trying stuff out, see how it works. So I'm going to delete my contrast so I don't get confused about it later. All right, so are we at our goal yet? Well, not quite. So one thing we can do is add some vibrance to bring that color up a little bit. We know that. Let's go back here. But the problem is that we've kind of lost a lot of our nebulosity. Let me go ahead and bring the vibrance up so I'm comparing apples to apples. So vibrance is, you can increase the vibrance and it will change the intensity, the saturation of the color, but it won't spike the saturation of the color. So if you want to really get heavy-handed with the saturation, you want to use saturation. So yeah, there we go. So we'll leave that at 18%. And again, you don't want to push everything all the way to the edge if you don't have to. So 18% is a lot in my book. I'm going to go back and see what I did before. Yeah, see all of this inside this little pocket here, all of this in here. I like that. I think that's part of the magic of the Rosette Nebulas. You have not just the hydrogen cloud, but you have all this other stuff going on in addition to the hydrogen. And I think we don't have that in this one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these curves and everything I've done up to this point and apply it to that background layer. So if I go click and I'm going to pull these down and put them right there. So now whatever happens, these adjustments are only being applied to that one background. So this is the chroma. Let me write that in here. Chroma balance, and then this one is the S-curve. So an S-curve, we pull down the shadows a little bit and push up the highlights. It increases the overall contrast in a very smooth manner. And then vibrance, of course, is vibrance. Okay, so we have all that. Now, because I'm in Affinity Photo and I've moved these items, these adjustments rather, up under my background here, and this background, by the way, was the Astro Flats Pro. That's version A. Okay, so I'm going to take version A and turn it off. I'm going to go to version B. Version B will be, of course, without Astro Flats Pro. And we'll see how that works out. Astro Flats Pro, again, sometimes it does a great job. It's absolutely, I did the Eastern Veil, and Astro Flats Pro just did an amazing job. It's one little, it's the stripe of the veil, whereas this is more kind of filling the entire frame. So maybe that has something to do with it. It does a better job on certain objects. But we're going to turn that off and see if we can do this without Astro Flats Pro. How far can we get? So what do we do? First thing, we're going to add some curves. And this set of curves is going to be to adjust the chroma. So, you know what? Actually, we're going to have to fix the fact that we have so much noise. I'm sorry, that the histogram lump is so far off the left edge. We need to get that closer to the left edge. So I'm going to click the picker and just pull down an area that I know I want to have dark. Okay. And then I will click on another area I know I want to have lighter. Just push that back up. And again, I just want to bring this up enough so that I'm just kind of sticking with the straight line. Okay, so that's good. And then within the same within the same curves adjustment, I'm going to go ahead and grab the red, because obviously I have way too much red here on this background. So I'm going to pull that down until you get it right about there. I like that. And then I can still come over here somewhere. Where do I like? I like kind of a middle area. I'm going to go right here and just kind of bring that back up until it's straight again. Okay. So now I've pulled the red out of the background. I've pushed and then just rebalanced the red so that it's again with the straight line. Okay. And you know what? I can go ahead and I know I have a little bit too much blue in here, so I'm going to pull some of this blue out. Make sure I'm not on a star. And click and drag down to pull the blue out. And I don't want to pull so much that the whole thing turns yellow, because I can certainly do that. That's way too much. So I'm going to do just enough so that it's in balance. Okay, I like that. And now I have another problem, and that is, remember, stars are not green, but these stars kind of have a little green halo around them. Let me zoom in on that so we can see better. See how they have a little green halo? This should be a little blue halo. So I'm just going to click right next to that star and pull it with the green selected and pull that down. So it just pulls the green out of the highlights there. So until my stars are now surrounded by blue, that's good. The problem is now I've pulled so much green out of everything else that I've gone magenta. So let me go ahead and come in here and push that green back up a little bit so I get a nice gray balance in there. Now another thing I find is I have a couple of little comet looking things here, but I know they're not comets. What that is noise. And so the reason the noise gets smeared out is because it's hot pixels. It's actually not noise, it's hot pixels, and the hot pixel just kind of marches along as the guiding gets a little bit off. So guiding is never perfect, and because of that we end up with these little streaks. So I'm just going to go in to my healing brush, and I'm going to alt click right here, and then I can come down here, and it's going to take what I alt clicked and apply that to whatever I paint over. Well, shoot. Okay, first of all, I need to be on the background layer, so let me click that, and now I can just get rid of that without getting rid of the star. Okay, I'm going to alt click right here, and then pull that guy out, and alt click right here, and pull this guy out. Okay, so that's all I see. There's probably more, but that's all I see right now. All right, so I'm going to apply that curves adjustment to this no flats. Version, and let's see what we have. Okay, so you remember the flats version, we lost a lot of our nebulosity up here, and in this version we have maybe too much. So is there a way to fix that? Well, yes. We go to our flats version, and we're going to use blend modes in order to fix that. One of my favorites is called multiply. What multiply does is it will, I have to turn it on, of course, it will multiply pixel by pixel. So it's always, you know, every pixel is given a value between 1 and 0, 1 being perfectly bright, 0 being perfectly shadow. And when we multiply fractions, of course, fractions get closer and closer to 0. So that's how this makes everything darker. Well, we don't want it that dark, so we can go to the opacity and pull the opacity down until we get to where we like the overall. So probably about right there. So we can of course go in and turn that off, turn it back on, see how that's helped that opacity. And then we can go back up and kind of tweak out the contrast a little bit more and just bring that up just a little bit, and it's going to blacken out all those stars. We can push the brightness slightly. We don't want to push the brightness too much because then we're blowing out the stars. Okay, so when I'm done, I go to File. First thing I do is Export, JPEG, export the whole document, make sure I'm on the correct day, so we'll export it wherever it feels like. Nice, it appears to, okay, save. And then I go to Facebook and post it, and everybody's liked it. So hopefully all of this has been a help to you, and you can, if you would, it really helps me to go ahead and like and especially subscribe. Until next time, clear skies.